Okay, so this is a response to the video that's been circulating the internet. It's already got, the official video's already got some 17 million views, and it's being widely circulated on Time Magazine, CNN, BBC, and so on. The video is called 10 Hours of Walking in New York City as a Woman. Basically, it's intended to highlight the problem of alleged harassment experienced by women in New York City. And in the video, there's a young woman walking through the streets, and she encounters, they say, about 100 incidents of men saying things to her which they argue is harassment. Now, this has provoked a very big reaction. A very large number of men, and quite a lot of women as well, have said this is absolutely ridiculous, that it's a mountain out of a molehill, that there's no evidence of harassment, that the words being said are, there's nothing wrong with them. From my own perspective, I don't quite agree that there's no problems with the things that are being said. Clearly some of those guys are trying to make a pass on her, and clearly at several points she looks uncomfortable. At one point there's a man who follows her for about 4 minutes, and that's inappropriate. He's got no purpose, he's clearly just following her. So I don't quite agree with those who say that there's absolutely no problem with this. However, there's a few things that really need to be put in context. She was walking through the streets of New York City for 10 hours. I believe this was around Manhattan, different streets. 10 hours. Now, 10 hours of walking in one of the world's biggest cities, and she has edited, or the group, Hollaback it's called, has edited a few minutes of footage of these guys supposedly harassing her. As some people have pointed out, how is saying hello harassment? How is saying good afternoon harassment? I guess it depends on the way they are saying it and what their intentions are. Some of it, though, I find it hard to see where the supposed harassment is. Some of those guys, I think, are being a little bit sleazy, and clearly maybe they're looking at it in a certain way which is suggestive. So, I don't agree with those who say there's no problem with this. On the other hand, I don't agree that every single comment that was said to her can count as harassment. And it's just further, a further sign that men need to be incredibly careful what they say. Now, I don't actually think it is appropriate to talk to a stranger in that way, but how do we know that all of those cases... I mean, we're only seeing one perspective here, right? We're not seeing the context in which those men may have been speaking. We don't see all their facial expressions because sometimes they're at the side. For all we know, some of those guys could have been vendors, as you get in every big city, who are maybe trying to attract people walking by to their business. And for all we know, they could have been saying that to the next man who walked by, anyone who walked by. I.e., I worked as a charity fundraiser, and one thing you have to do is stand in the public street and say hello to strangers. How do we know that some of those guys were not doing that? Simply, we're only seeing one perspective here. What we're seeing is the front view, which is her looking uncomfortable. We're not seeing the context in which they were saying that. So it's clearly one-sided. Some people have pointed out there's a racial dynamic because the vast majority of guys seem to be black. I don't know about that. But put it this way, if she was walking through New York City for 10 hours, and they've got about 100 people, how many people would she have walked past? Bear in mind this is one of the world's biggest cities. Thousands. Absolutely thousands. Which means that thousands of men wouldn't have said anything. So to me this just seems like another feminist stunt to try and demonize men by saying that all men in New York City behave this way. And it's deeply misguided. Now at the end of the video, Hollaback, which is an anti-harassment group that is promoted this, they say donate. Well, my question is, donate for what exactly? What are you going to do? What exactly is your approach? Donate to go and tell these men off? Donate to what? Have them put in jail? What exactly is Hollaback proposing here? Now, they say the campaign is to raise awareness of the problem, and I'm not saying for a second that there isn't issues of harassment in New York City, or in any big city for that matter. But to me this very much seems like a first world woman problem, in the sense that if this is considered to be a traumatizing experience, maybe she should see what it's like to be a woman in certain parts of the world where I think it's just it's a very dangerous misconception to try and send out the impression that some men saying slightly inappropriate comments is somehow can be seen as harassment. Inappropriate, maybe. Harassment? Now, to me, harassment would be if a guy is being really sleazy, if he's going up to a woman, if he's making very sexually suggestive remarks. I didn't hear a single one of those remarks that were sexually suggestive, in the sense that there was absolutely nothing explicitly sexual. There wasn't. Listen to it yourself if you don't believe me. I'll put a link to it. Inappropriate, yeah, maybe. I don't think it's particularly polite to speak to a stranger. Some guys have said that women expect men to make the first move, so they have to do that. I think there might be another time and place to do it other than on a public street. But basically, I feel this is just yet another attempt by the feminist movement to try and vilify men. Because this video was not making any reference to the fact that she walked past thousands of guys who didn't say anything. No, it's just focusing on the men who did say something, and then trying to make that out like this is a massive problem. Now, let's put things in context. If she was walking through the streets for 10 hours, and this is the sort of response that she got, that means there is 9 hours and 50 minutes of nothing happening. Why is that not being spoken about? And I accept that if a woman is uncomfortable, then men shouldn't do it. But at the same time, I do think some women need to get over themselves and stop martyrizing themselves as a victim. I've seen a lot of women say this woman is overreacting. Now, I wasn't in her shoes, so I cannot say whether she was comfortable or not. I cannot say if this is an act. Some people have suggested the guy following her was an actor. I don't know about that, but all I'm saying is that while some of that was inappropriate, what exactly would Hollaback like to see? Does Hollaback want to see these men arrested? And if so, then that is a serious, serious issue regarding free speech, because then basically what they're saying is you cannot speak to a stranger at all. I just think it's very flawed. And that is not to advocate some of the things that is being said. And by the way, I understand there's been a backlash against her. There's been rape threats and so on. Now that is a completely reprehensible thing. The guys who are doing that are absolute cards, and it's despicable. But unfortunately, when feminists pull these sort of stunts to try and attack all men, then you are going to get a lot of anger, and you are going to get nutters who then resort to that sort of backlash. And you know what? It's only going to make it a constant cycle. You vilify all men, then you'll get some nutters who resent it and use extreme methods to get back. And like I say, that's completely shameful. I do not at all condone what those guys are doing. But you attack an entire gender, what do you expect? I mean, this is basically part of the feminist war on men, because it is trying to imply that all men in New York City behave that way. There's no focus whatsoever on the fact that the vast majority of the time she presumably didn't have harassment, otherwise she would have included it in the video. So I just think it's very flawed, and I think those sort of issues need to be spoken about. And once again, I am not saying what those guys said was appropriate. I don't agree with people who say it was completely innocent. I think some of the things they were saying probably was inappropriate, but we're only seeing one side. We're not seeing the full context. We're not seeing their facial expressions. We're not seeing what exchange followed afterwards, because the video is clearly edited. You know, we're only taking her word for it that all of these guys were being sleazy. How do we know that some of those guys weren't saying, hello, good afternoon, would you like to buy this product, as regular vendors would do? We just don't know. So I do have a problem with this sort of approach. I'm not saying that there should be nothing done about harassment, but I think there would be different ways to do it.